In this lesson, I want to jump to a higher level of abstraction and talk about a concept called Caesura. Caesura is also the title of a lecture that Bion gave and later rewrote into an article. In this class, I will talk about Caesura from 3 points of view. I will talk about the definition of the word Caesura. I will talk about Caesura as a model in Bion's language, and I will talk about the main ideas in Bion's article titled Caesura. Let's start with the definition of the word Caesura. Caesura is a Latin word written as Caesura, which means a sharp interruption that is part of a continuum. In the world of composition, it describes a pause or a sharp interruption that is followed by a continuation. For example, when there's a pause in the music and then the music continues. That pause, which is considered a part of the melody, is called Caesura. In poetry, sometimes the last letter in the last word of the line is transferred to the next line. And again, this space that is generated within a word, which is part of the structure of the poem, is called Caesura. In Bion's world, Bion actually clings to a certain phrase that Freud said. Bion identifies the word Caesura within this phrase and its enormous creative potential. Freud writes, "There is much more continuity between intra-uterine life and earliest infancy than the impressive Caesura of the act of birth allows us to believe." That is, although there is apparently a Caesura, a very sharp interruption, sharp separation between life in the womb and life after birth, there is in fact a lot of continuation than we may believe between these two periods, between the intrauterine period and the period after birth. Bion is interested in implanting models. He is not trying to formulate a theory of child development. Yes, he is interested in the fact that there is a continuation between prenatal and postnatal life, but what interests him more is implanting models. According to Bion, Caesura is a model that simultaneously represents interruption and continuation. So the word Caesura in Bion's language describes a special link that is simultaneously connection and disconnection. In another language, simultaneously one and two. In another language, simultaneously and or, and/or. For example, are the body and mind two different entities, or in fact a union, body-mind? The Caesura model says they are both. We do not have to and actually cannot decide. Simultaneously there is body and there is mind, two different entities, and simultaneously there is a body-mind, one entity. Simultaneously one and simultaneously two. And/or. If we were to talk or to take Wilber's model concerning the great chain of being, a model I described in a class about dreaming, about the different spheres, one containing the other, there's a sphere of material and then living body, mind, soul, and spirit, these spheres that Wilber calls the great chain of being. It could be said that there's a Caesura between each of these spheres. Simultaneously, there's a continuation, and simultaneously, there's a separation. The experience of existence is simultaneously united and simultaneously divided into separate spheres. In that lesson, I also mentioned that dream work in Bion's language generates a certain separation connection between the conscious and the unconscious, a semi-permeable barrier, a barrier that simultaneously separates and connects. In the Hebrew introduction to Bion's article Caesura, two Israeli writers, Bergstein and Aharoni, write, "The word Caesura carries a meaning of interruption in the continuation, a sharp cut, after which there's a continuation. The concept brings to mind a topographical pattern in which there is a valley, a channel, or a creek. This valley is an interruption in the continuation of the surface. It is a wild place. The old trail ends at the creek, and you have to successfully traverse it and find the new trail. The valley that separates the paths is also the link that unites them. If we don't successfully cross it and get to the other side, it becomes an abyss. The caesura itself is a process. Birth has a duration, a continuation in time, and an evolution. It is not a linear, it is not a line, but a space that has margins and a middle. It is like a transitional space that has a paradoxical quality and is found between inside and outside, between interruption and continuation, closure and opening. Despite the sharpness of the cut, the continuation exists. This image reminds me of the scene in one of the Indiana Jones movies where the main character has to cross an abyss and must do it through an act of faith. Only if he imagines the bridge will it be created beneath his feet. With every step, he succeeds in making a leap of faith, and the next link of the bridge appears, which eventually takes him to the other side. And that is more or less what happens, in fact, when we want to cross the caesura. An act of faith is needed, which leads us between the poles and between the tendency and the temptation to collapse towards them, towards the known and the decisive. This quote by Aharoni and Bergstein also brings us to Winnicott's language. The concept of caesura is a Bionian parallel, so to speak, to Winnicott's concept of transitional space, and Winnicott's plea to sit with a paradox, that is, to contain a paradox and not to solve it.